There's a Vader story that people are calling better than any Star Wars movie, and the most common reaction is, why isn't this a movie yet? After breaking it all down, I think they're right. But there's a reason Disney hasn't touched it, and it's not the one you think. I want to be clear about what this video is. This isn't a comic review, it isn't a lore explainer, and it's definitely not a Disney Rage video. What this is a case. A calm, specific, airtight case for something the Star Wars community has been saying for years. I'm just going to be the one to finally build it out loud. The comic is called Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, written by Charles Soule, drawn primarily by Giuseppe Camuncoli, published by Marvel across 25 issues between June 2017 and December 2018. And it is, by a margin that honestly surprised me, the single best Darth Vader story anyone has ever told. Better than the original trilogy's version. Better than the prequels. Better than Rogue One. Better than Obi-Wan Kenobi. Better than anything Disney has put on screen. The reason is simpler than you'd think. It lives inside his grief. Not beside it. Not gesturing at it from a safe distance. Inside it. Here's where it starts. You remember this moment. End of Revenge of the Sith. Vader's on the operating table. The suit locks into place. He asks about Padme. Palpatine tells him she's dead, and he screams. That, no! It's been memed to death. People have made fun of it for 20 years. But here's the thing. The scream is real. The emotion behind it is real. The problem was never the feeling. The problem was that the movie ended right after it. Revenge of the Sith gave us the explosion, but not the fallout. It showed us a man losing everything, and then just cut to credits. Soule's comic picks up 1 second later. Not a week. Not a year in some new status quo. 1 second after that scream ends. The respirator clicks on. Vader's eyes open behind the red lenses for the first time. And the series asks the one question the films never had time to answer. What happens now? What happens inside a man who just destroyed everything he loved, and who has to keep breathing? Literally, mechanically, a machine pumping air into lungs that can't manage it on their own, through the aftermath. The very first thing Palpatine does is take Vader to a balcony overlooking the burning Jedi Temple. Two figures silhouetted against destruction, and Palpatine starts talking. Not gloating, not exactly. Something more precise. He tells Vader the Jedi are gone. The Republic is gone. The life Anakin Skywalker lived is over. And then he frames Padme's death as Anakin's fault. Not his own manipulation. Not the dark side. Not the events he orchestrated across 3 films. Your weakness. Your failure. She's gone because of you. From this moment forward, that's how Palpatine controls Vader. Not with threats. Not with raw force power. With grief. Every time Vader's mind drifts toward Padme, toward the life he might have had, the Emperor is there to catch that thought and twist it into rage, and twist that rage into obedience. It's the most honest depiction of psychological abuse in Star Wars, and it starts on page 1. Now, if you know the broad strokes of this series, you know there's a lot of plot machinery in the early issues. Vader earns his red lightsaber. He hunts surviving Jedi. He deals with the Inquisitors. He navigates Imperial politics. Soule is a genuinely skilled writer, and Camuncoli draws action like few others in the business. But I'm going to be honest with you about something. None of that is why people love this comic. The Jedi hunts, the Inquisitor backstories, the political maneuvering. Every time someone breaks down this series in detail, those sections pull the least engagement. Comments don't mention them. Reddit threads skip right over them. What people talk about. The thing that makes a grown adult throw their copy of issue 25 onto the couch and leave the room with tears in their eyes, which is a real reaction, a real person described, is Padme. She's dead. She's been dead since the opening scene, and she is in every single issue of this comic. Not as a character, as an absence, as a wound that won't close because Vader won't let it close. Soule understood something about grief that most Star Wars stories don't even attempt. Grief isn't a thing that happens to you once. It's a thing you live inside. It becomes the lens everything else gets filtered through. Every time Vader kills a Jedi, he's not just executing the Emperor's will. He's punishing the order he blames for separating him from her. Every time he builds something for the Empire, it's a distraction from the fact that the only thing he actually wants to build is a way back to her. Every act of violence, every dark side ritual, every choice to go deeper instead of turning around, it all radiates outward from the same center. A dead woman he can't stop loving and can't bring himself to mourn. There's a moment early in the series that sets the template for everything that follows. Vader has to corrupt a kyber crystal, turn it red through a dark side process. The mechanics don't matter here. What matters is that the crystal fights back. It's connected to the Force. It resists corruption. And the way it resists is by showing Vader a vision. In the vision, he sees himself picking up a Jedi's green-bladed lightsaber, going back, walking into the Jedi Temple, confronting Palpatine, cutting him down, and then walking away, free, unburdened, returning to the light. It's the first what if in the series. And what makes it devastating isn't the vision itself. It's what Vader does with it. He rejects it, forces the crystal to submit, bleeds it red. And in that one act, Soule establishes the emotional rule that governs the entire 25 issues. This is not a story about a man who was trapped. It's a story about a man who keeps choosing the trap. Because the alternative would mean facing what he's done. And that specific distinction, is what people mean when they call him the most traumatized person in Star Wars. The middle stretch of the series builds Vader's power, establishes his role in the Empire, moves pieces into position. But scattered throughout, like shrapnel from an old wound, are these moments where Anakin's old self surfaces. A hesitation before a killing blow. A memory triggered by something small, a child's face, a familiar phrase. A moment in his meditation chamber where the mask comes off and there's just a burned, broken man sitting alone in a dark room. The machine's breathing for him because his body can't manage it anymore. These moments are where the audience lives. They're where the comment sections light up. They're where people write things like, frankly heartbreaking, and mean it without a trace of irony. And then we get to the ending, issues 19 through 25. The arc called Fortress Vader. This is where the entire series cashes in every emotional chip it's been quietly accumulating. Vader returns to Mustafar, the planet where he burned, the planet where he lost his limbs, his body, his life as Anakin Skywalker. And he starts building. You've seen this fortress. It's the Black Tower in Rogue One, the one Krennic visits. But Soule gives it a purpose the film never hinted at. Mustafar sits on a dark side nexus, a wound in the Force itself, and Vader has found a way, through an ancient Sith artifact, a mask containing the consciousness of a dead Sith Lord named Momin, to design the fortress as a kind of machine. A machine that channels the dark side energy toward one single, impossible purpose. He wants to open a door between the living and the dead. He wants to see Padme again. That's it. That's the whole thing. Underneath the dark side rituals and the ancient Sith engineering and the galaxy-spanning Imperial machinery, a man is building a tower on the planet that ruined him because he wants to see his wife. Issue 25. The door opens. Vader steps through. And what follows is not a battle. There's no enemy to fight, no army to command. He walks through a vision, backward and inward through his own life. The choices, the turning points, the junctions where Anakin Skywalker could have gone a different way. He sees the Jedi Temple. He sees Obi-Wan. He sees the faces of people he killed. And then, at the center of everything, he sees her, Padme, alive, present, looking at him, Not a trick, not exactly. A vision of the life that could have existed. The reality where he turned back, where he saved her, where they raised their children together, where Anakin Skywalker lived out the life that Darth Vader burned to the ground. He reaches for her. One panel, one breath. It seems like he might actually cross over. Like 25 issues of grief might break in the other direction. Padme is right there. The life he wanted is right there. And then he doesn't take it. The door closes. Whether he pulled back or was pulled back, whether the dark side wouldn't release him or he couldn't face the man he'd have to become again, the result is the same. He comes out the other side alone. The fortress is complete. The man inside it is gone. What's left is the mask, the breathing, and the long walk toward a new hope. One reader described finishing this issue by throwing the comic onto the couch and storming out of the room. They had tears. That's not an unusual reaction. The climax works because Soule earned it. Not with spectacle, not with a lightsaber duel, but with 24 issues of patient, accumulating sadness. By the time Vader stands on that balcony overlooking the lava fields of Mustafar, you're not watching a villain survey his domain. You're watching a man who just confirmed, for the last time, that there is no way back. So, the title of this video says this story is better than any Star Wars movie. And I want to defend that claim in a way that's fair to the movies, because this isn't about trashing anyone's work. It's about what different formats can do. Revenge of the Sith had to fit Anakin's entire fall into a film that was also resolving a galactic war, staging multiple duels, executing Order 66, depicting the births of Luke and Leia, and setting up the original trilogy. In 140 minutes shared with a dozen other storylines, the emotional beats of Anakin's transformation are there, but they're compressed. The film gives you the outline of the tragedy. It can't give you the experience of living inside it. Because it's a movie. It has 2.5 hours and a lot of ground to cover. The original trilogy keeps Vader deliberately opaque. He's an antagonist, a force of nature in a black suit, and we're positioned with the heroes looking up at him. The one real exception is the throne room in Return of the Jedi, where Vader's conflict finally surfaces in the decision to save Luke. Genuinely one of the great moments in cinema. But it's one scene, at the end of 3 films, and the emotional weight of his redemption depends almost entirely on us projecting an inner life onto a character who's been a mystery for 6 hours of screen time. Jedi asks us to believe there was always a conflict inside Vader. Soule's comic shows you what that conflict actually looked like, choice by choice, day by day. Then there's Rogue One, the hallway scene. 30 seconds of Vader cutting through rebel soldiers in the dark. One of the most celebrated Star Wars moments of the Disney era. Magnificent. But it's a scene about Vader as object, not subject. The emotional register is awe and fear, not empathy, not grief. The camera has always looked at Vader. Soule's comic is the first major Star Wars story to put the camera inside him. That's not a criticism of the filmmakers, it's just what 25 issues of comics can do that a 2-hour movie structurally cannot. Now, before I get to the adaptation question and pay off that promise from the beginning about why Disney hasn't touched this, a small detour. Because there's something hidden in this comic that even the people who've broken it down in detail managed to miss. At one point in the series, there's a background panel showing a list of Sith Lords written in Aurebesh, the in-universe Star Wars alphabet. Most people glance past it, background detail, but Aurebesh is fully translatable. Every character maps to a Latin alphabet letter. And the Star Wars fan community has a dedicated subset of people who go through every single piece of background text with a magnifying glass. One of those fans translated this list. On the 8th row, they found a name that shouldn't be there. Binks, as in Jar Jar, as in the Darth Jar Jar theory, that wildly viral Reddit hypothesis from 2015 arguing Jar Jar Binks was originally designed as a hidden Sith Lord pulling strings behind the scenes. Someone on the creative team slipped a Darth Jar Jar reference into a background list of Sith lords. And the original video that broke down this series never caught it. A commenter did. That single discovery pulled 182 engagements. People don't go letter by letter through background panels of a comic they feel lukewarm about. That level of investment tells you everything. Okay, the adaptation question. And I want to do something different here. Not treat this like a fan wish list, but like a pitch meeting. 3 formats, specific arguments, a position on which one actually works. Format 1, Clone Wars style animation. The case is strong. Dave Filoni's team proved across 7 seasons of the Clone Wars and 4 seasons of Rebels that animated Star Wars can go darker and more emotionally complex than most people expect. The Umbara arc, the Maul storylines, the Siege of Mandalore, Order 66 through Ahsoka's eyes. These are sequences that achieve genuine devastation within a show that technically aired on Cartoon Network. Animation also solves the biggest practical problem with a Vader story, the mask. Extended dramatic scenes are hard when your lead can't show his face. In animation, you can move the camera through the mask. You can render Anakin's burned face underneath. You can transition seamlessly between Vader's external world and his internal visions of Padme, without the uncanny valley risk of digitally de-aging a live actor. The audience already exists. The tonal precedent already exists. This is the most immediately viable format. Format 2, a game in the style of Jedi Fallen Order or Survivor. And this one's trickier than it sounds. Playing as Vader hunting Jedi is a compelling power fantasy, but that's exactly the problem. A game needs to make you feel powerful. It needs combat loops and progression systems and the dopamine hit of getting stronger. Soule's story is about a man who already has all the power in the galaxy, and it means nothing because the one thing he wants, he can't have. The emotional architecture of this comic actively fights against the gameplay loop a Vader game would need. You'd end up with a great action game and a compromised story. The tragedy would get buried under lightsaber upgrade trees. Format 3, live-action Disney Plus series. And this is the one that's most interesting to argue for, because we've already seen what happens when Disney attempts post-Revenge of the Sith Vader on screen. Obi-Wan Kenobi. That series tried to explore some of this same emotional territory. Vader's lingering connection to his old life, the pain underneath the armor, and it had moments that worked. But it also had to split its focus with Obi-Wan's story, with young Leia, with a new villain, and the Vader material never got the room it needed to breathe. Andor, on the other hand, proved something crucial. Star Wars can be prestige television. It can be slow, patient, morally complex, and deeply human. It can trust its audience with silence and ambiguity. If you married Andor's tonal approach with Soule's emotional material, 8 to 10 episodes, a single protagonist, the camera never leaving Vader's perspective, you'd have something unlike anything Star Wars has produced. The casting challenge is real. Whoever's inside that suit for extended dramatic scenes, acting through a mask with only body language and vocal performance, that's a brutally difficult role. But the precedent Andor set makes this feel less impossible than it would have 3 years ago. My position? Animation. Clone Wars style. It solves the mask problem, it has tonal precedent, it reaches the right audience, and it allows the visual expressionism the comic's most powerful moments demand. The visions, the force sequences, the seamless movement between what's happening outside Vader and what's happening inside him. That's my pitch. But here's the thing. I promised at the top of this video that there's a reason Disney hasn't adapted this, and that it's not the one you think. So let me pay that off honestly, because I meant it when I said this isn't clickbait. The obvious answer people reach for is that Disney's too cowardly, or too focused on nostalgia farming, or too creatively bankrupt to see what's sitting right in front of them. And that's satisfying to say. It feels true, but it's not the whole picture. Reason 1, and this is the one most people haven't considered, is structural. Adapting a comic that exists within Disney's own ecosystem, Marvel publishing a Star Wars title under the Lucasfilm banner, sounds simple, but it introduces royalty and credit structures that are more complex than writing an original screenplay. Soule would need to be credited and compensated as a source material creator. That's not a deal breaker, but it's a layer of negotiation that original content doesn't require. Studios tend to follow the path of least contractual resistance. Reason 2 is tonal, and this is the big one. Soule's comic is about grief, psychological abuse, the seductive nature of evil, and a protagonist who murdered children and spends 25 issues choosing not to feel remorse about it. Andor pushed the tonal boundaries of Star Wars further than anyone expected, but Andor had a heroic protagonist. Cassian was morally compromised, but he was on the right side. Vader isn't. There's no moment in Soule's run where Vader becomes sympathetic in the way a Disney protagonist needs to be sympathetic. You understand him. You grieve for him. But he doesn't earn redemption. He doesn't even try. That's the whole point of the story. And it's a profoundly difficult thing to sell to the same audience you're also marketing lightsaber toys to. Reason 3 is overlap. Obi-Wan Kenobi already covered post-Revenge of the Sith Vader territory. Ahsoka deals with legacy characters and the weight of the prequel era. The Acolyte explored dark side mythology. Internally, Lucasfilm has to manage a content ecosystem where a dedicated Vader series risks cannibalizing audience interest from projects already in development. It's not that nobody at Lucasfilm has read the Soule run and thought, this should be a show. It's that greenlighting it means acknowledging that your other Vader-adjacent content didn't hit the bar this comic set. And that's a hard conversation to have inside any studio. So that's the honest answer. It's not one thing. It's a combination of contractual friction, brand tonal risk, and internal content overlap that makes the adaptation less straightforward than fans want it to be. Not impossible. Just complicated enough that it keeps not happening. And maybe, that's okay. Because here's what I keep coming back to. Charles Soule already told the story. Giuseppe Camuncoli already drew it. 25 issues. Available right now. You can read it tonight. The best Darth Vader story ever told already exists. It doesn't need Disney's permission to matter. The real tragedy of this comic isn't that it hasn't been adapted. The real tragedy is the one on the page. A man who lost everything and kept choosing to lose more. Who stood in front of a door that led back to the person he loved and couldn't walk through it. Not because it was locked, but because walking through would mean admitting he'd been wrong about everything since. That's not a Star Wars story. That's a human story. Maybe the most human story this franchise has ever told. And most people will never read it. Vader stands on the balcony of the fortress he built on the planet that destroyed him, overlooking the lava fields where Anakin Skywalker burned alive, and there's nothing left. No rage, no hope. Just the weight of what was lost, and the sound of a machine breathing for a man who doesn't want to be alive, but won't allow himself to die. That's the ending Soule wrote. Not a cliffhanger, not a tease for the next arc, just silence and fire and the long walk forward into a life that isn't really a life anymore. Someone in the comments of the original breakdown video wrote, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, so many people getting so much money writing bad stories, and this exists. They weren't angry, they were just tired and certain. And I think they're right. I'm not saying anything the community hasn't already said. I just wanted to build the case. If you haven't read it, read it. If you have, you already know. Subscribe if you want more like this.